Well, hello and welcome to episode number 347 of the Plane Talking UK podcast. I'm Carlos, and in this week's show, Korean Air are playing with some Lego. We take a look at an airline that doesn't fly passengers or freight and only flies one way. And an Airbus A320 gets a new paint job made of live bees. In the military, the USAF has released the findings of an F-16 crash in South Carolina. The British Army gets some new kit, and Scotland's Loch Ness monster fails to claim a PBY Catalina as its victim. But joining me this week, as always, in the P2UK Master Suite Studios, being absolutely awesome, as always, it is the legendary man that is Matt Smith.
I'll turn my mic on, shall I? Hello, everyone. Yes, good evening. Do love a last-minute Scrabble, don't you? Good game, though.
Yeah, I love Scrabble. I haven't played Scrabble for years.
How can you enjoy Scrabble? You can't spell.
Oh no, I can spell, but
Right.
just not the words that we can say on this show without getting a.
Oh, okay, lovely. Yeah. No longer PG rating. Yeah.
Anyway, I'm more of a Monopoly man myself.
So I've heard. Yes.
Anyway, how is Mr. Smith this week?
Yes, all good, thank you. Yes, everything's up and running. Last minute, we had a weird noise in the studio that we couldn't get rid of, but we got rid of it now, so it's all good. Yes.
You've pushed Alfie out of the studio. Then.
That's it. Yeah. We've banished him to the garden outside. He lives in a kennel outside now. Yeah.
Well, good to have you on as always in the studio, Matt. Well done. And joining us this week, as always, is the man who puts the B in BA. It is, of course, Neville Barnes.
Well, if I turn my mic up, that will work as well, won't it? Yes, well, hello, good evening, everybody. As you can see, I've been messing with the new video filters in Zoom this week, which has been very exciting. And obviously, we need to be in a COVID-safe area, so we need to do that as well, just to make sure everything's nice and safe.
I'm particularly enjoying the eyebrows, Nev.
Yes, they are good, aren't they? And if I had some glasses to that as well, particularly funky, isn't it? I would have thought. But
I don't know what to do with that information.
No, the trouble is every time there's a function in Zoom as well, which says apply to all future meetings. And of course, I use Zoom for not only this fantastic podcast, but also for work as well. And of course, it's very easy to forget that you've got that left on as well. But no. All well, thank you very much.
Oh, Nev. Oh, I hope they don't introduce any more other random ones.
I think they will.
Oh, dear. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Joining us all the way from the US is, of course, well, it's our resident military expert is, of course, Armando. Welcome.
I just wanted to follow suit and keep my microphone muted. Hi, guys. It's good to be here in person.
Yes, spot the deliberate mistake there where we didn't get an opportunity to do a sound check with Armando. Armando, could you just sort of turn your gain down a little bit? You're over-modulating, I think is the correct term, is it, Nev?
That is.
I will speak softly while I do that.
Okay, good, well lovely. As you were, yeah.
How things?
Pretend that didn't happen and move on. Yeah.
How's things been with you, Armando, this week? Busy flying everywhere?
Not a lot of flying, except for one notable exception, which is I got to I wouldn't even call it training. I got to see Dr. Steph in action. She is not just all talk. She is actually a good pilot. And she did come up to my drop zone, and we flew the 182 together, and I got her checked out in that airplane, and she is an excellent pilot and a skydiver and everything else that is in her introduction on APG. So I can verify it.
Have you signed a book to say she's passed?
I have no authority to sign anybody's book, but I did let the owner of the DZ know she's good to go. So, and I think we had fun doing it too. It's a fun little airfield to fly in and out of. Obviously, she's got the skydiving stuff down. She knows everything about the mission planning, the planning of a skydive drop, but that particular airfield is actually just a little bit challenging. It's short, it's grass, it's sloped, it's surrounded by trees, and I think we actually have a little bit video that we can play out now. We can play it later. It's up to Matt when he wants to do that.
There we go.
And as I can see from the feed, we're doing it now. So here we go. Here's a very unofficial checkout in an airplane. Unfortunately, Steph actually has seen this for the first time here on the podcast. So it's a world.
Did you say this was a 150, Armando?
No, this is a Cessna 182 H model.
182. Okay.
Yep. So it's kind of a standard, your smallest. I'm sure you can skydive out of anything. You can jump out of any airplane, but this is a small for a skydive plane. We put one pilot and then 4 jumpers in there, whether it's 2 tandems or 4 fun jumpers or certified jumpers. But you can see in the video there, I just flew first, and it's kind of a I say, I do, and then you do type thing, where I went up and flew first and showed her how to work the door, how to open that door midair, and then how to close it. And then the most challenging part was, again, coming back into the airfield. As you can see from that feed there, it's, we had Ryan on a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about some short airfields surrounded by trees. This is probably right up there with them. This particular runway we're going into right now is a 2,600 foot runway, of which only about 2,000 feet are usable, surrounded by, it's a little bit challenging, and it's surrounded by trees, and it's sloped, so you can only take off one direction and land one direction. And then, so I flew a couple patterns, I showed her the airplane, and then we did a magical seat swap. And Steph got into the pilot seat, into the left seat, and she did a fantastic job. Here she is taking off, and one of the challenges in this airfield, in this airplane, is when you're really, really heavy, and it's North Carolina, and it's a hot day, the airplane does not want to fly, and you got some trees at the end of the runway. And the key is, don't hit the trees. I know that sounds kind of obvious, but I think as a pilot, you can get a little bit nervous when the airplane's not climbing and you have those 100-foot trees at the end of the runway. But, I had an old Air Force instructor that used to tell me, hey, the top third of the trees is soft, so if you need to drag the gear through them, you'll be all right.
So you both got parachutes on, Armando. I'm guessing you've got
Is
faith in the aircraft.
Is that a comment on Steph's flying?
Yeah, it's purely my nerves. It's first time no, actually, it's the second time I've flown.
Yeah, Steph's got no audio on, so you can say what you like.
Oh, great. In that case, yeah, I was real nervous when she showed up to the airplane. She was a little bit wobbly, and no, I'm just kidding. No, because we were going to open the door. If we're going to open that door, we both needed to have parachutes on in that particular airplane.
Right. Okay.
While the airplane does have seat belts, it's got restraints. It's an extra requirement and a safety measure if you're going to open the door in flight to have a parachute.
Have you done a lot of jumping yourself, Armando?
I've only gone about half a dozen times.
Right. Okay.
And it was 2 of them were up at. Yeah, 2 of them were actually up at Stewart's place up there in Norfolk.
Oh wow! Okay.
Out of that caravan, yeah. I took some friends skydiving up there.
Captain Cruz says in the chat room that the interior, and I must admit, it looks really pristine interior in that aircraft. It's very
I don't know if we're being facetious or not, but we've pretty much stripped anything that doesn't need to be in that airplane out, because everything weighs something, and
right.
Including the yoke for where the first officer might be.
Yeah,
absolutely. Perish the
yeah,
thought.
we took that out too. There's just a tennis ball, and I think Captain Nick was asking how we fly from the right seat.
Yes.
Well, you can use your imagination.
Yeah. Your teeth, I think, was the answer, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. To answer Stephen Ivy's question, is the tennis ball doesn't do anything. It's literally there just to protect the tandem jumper, or if there's a jumper sitting next to the pilot, they sit with their back to the panel.
So they don't snag on it, basically, as they come
Right.
out of the aircraft. Right? Yeah. Okay. When you say it like that makes sense.
I must say, having flown the 150 and the 172 a number of times, it looks just as cozy there as it does in the 150.
Is that a thing?
It is. It is cozy. However, you'd be surprised how much room there is in a Cessna 182 when you take all the seats out. And, I used to watch, Flying Wild Alaska is a great show, and the ice pilots and all that stuff. And it's amazing how much stuff you would be able to fit into a 182. It's actually pretty big when you take everything out.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, while we're talking about sort of aircraft and all that kind of thing, I notice, Carlos, that we've got a new safety video that's been released.
Yes, we have. For those of you who may have seen, you may not have seen, Air New Zealand are obviously the aficionados of releasing fantastic safety videos for their flights. And Air New Zealand have released their latest safety video. And Matt's just playing the video actually now for those of you who are watching the YouTube feed. And for those of you watching, you might notice that obviously apart from being its usual humorous kind of comedy kind of sketch show as such, which Air New Zealand do. I have to say, we've said this on the production meeting yesterday, that the guy, the Air New Zealand flight crew chap who's sitting on the left-hand side, has one of the largest grins ever in history of human beings.
Right.
I mean, this guy's grin is, well, it's just enormous.
It's under your seat.
But yeah, for those of you who may not have seen it, Matt will put the links to that video in the show notes
absolutely.
as well, just in case you haven't seen it. But moving on,
Daniel Ricardo from Formula One.
yeah.
Okay. That is quite the grin, isn't it? There we go. Look, we're back.
Actually, quickly for next week's show, if anyone has any thoughts on what they think of the video, send them in. We'd love to hear what you think about the video.
Yeah.
But, moving on, Nev, you've got some news about a little just for fun kind of with a prize competition we're running on Facebook right now.
Yeah, definitely. We don't have many of the PTUK mugs these days, do we? So they are quite in demand. But we're going to do a quick PTUK New Year's fill in the blanks competition. So for your chance to win an amazing PTUK mug, all you need to do is tell us what Matt said. So have a look at this. It's a well, as you can see, it's a gentleman in a high-vis jacket with some gaffer tape or speed tape there. So I'm sure there's the few people have already had some ideas about what Matt might be saying.
Funnily enough, he's got a few himself.
Well, yes. So what happened when Matt boarded his flight, took the window seat and saw this? What were his first words? So the funniest ones will be chosen by us, and we're going to announced on our first New Year's show. But don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, family show.
Quite, yeah, absolutely. Always the way.
But Nev, while you're in the hot seat, we've got a special mention and a thank you to some very special people, haven't we? It's for the beginning of the month.
Yes, that means it's Patreon time, and time for us to thank everyone that has contributed over the last month. And via Patreon, that is Nick Codling, Warren Dixon, Luis Jarez, Alan Loveday, Andrew van der Sarg, Alan White, Steve Howland, Tanya Wyman, Megan Carrion, Jacob Darlington Brown, Nicholas Hewitt, Masha, Owen, Ruben Wells, Graham Haley, Jonathan Warner, Eric Graves, Matt Caton, Jordan Rose, Andrew Wilson, Captain Jeff, Adam Spink, Liz Piper, Jeff Ward, Myler, Evan Shue, Philip Labe, Stuart Backer, Ray Williams and Stephanie Plummer. And on PayPal, it's from Tony S, Jenny in Rome, Richard Adams, and Mazuz Karim. Many thanks to one and all, because your contributions help us keep the show on the air, and we couldn't do it without you. So thank you very much indeed.
And don't forget, there is a very special treat for those of you who do contribute through Patreon and PayPal. And we've got some details coming up about that at the end of the show, so stay tuned. So a big thanks to everyone who's joined us in the YouTube chat room this evening, all the usual family members in there. We're going to run through the names. Let's have a look. We've got Auntie Liz, obviously keeping a check on us. Captain Cruz, hello to you. We've got Richard Adams, hello Richard. Stephen H, Jacob Darlington Brown, my word, what morning. All he says. Oh yeah, because it's early in the morning there. Where are we? 6 a.m. Wow. Evan Shue. Hello. Oh, another early one for Evan Shue. Blimey. Alan Loveday. Dr. Steph's also in there. She's still at work, bless her, but she's watching rather than listening to the show. We've got Myla. Hello to you, Myla. Hope you're well. Dave Abbey. Hello, Dave. Our main man, Micah, wielding the blue spanner of death, keeping an eye on everyone in the chat room, making sure you're all good. Stephen Ivy, he was in the car wash watching the show. Hopefully he's finished that now. And I'm not sure I don't miss anyone. Captain Cruise, Mazuz Kareem. Hello to you, Mazuz. Well, hello to you. And scrolling down, make sure I don't miss anyone. DJ Wilf. Hello to you, DJ Wilf. And Jenny in Rome as well. Hello to you, Jenny. And Airline Pilot Guy show as well.
Never heard of him. Who's that?
Obviously, keeping an eye, making sure we started on time, which we did start on time this week. So don't forget, if you are watching us on YouTube and you don't already do it, make sure you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon, which is right next door to it, to be notified when we are live and recording as we are right now, because we'd love to have you in the chat room. And if you're listening to the audio podcast and you haven't checked us out on YouTube yet, don't forget to give us a look on YouTube and see what all our lovely faces look like. Well,
or don't.
Or don't.
So don't want to put you off your breakfast, you know.
No, we don't want to do that. But we've got loads to get through on the show this week, and I think we should kick things off. So we are going to start the show then, as we do each week, with our rundown of the weekly news from around the world and the UK. So I know Armando's eating his bowl of cereal, but if everyone's ready,
Yes.
Let's go.
let's go. So, kicking off this week's first news story, this one comes to us from simpleflying.com. And I love this story, mainly because I love Lego. So, Korean Air uses Lego bricks to explain how the 777 air filters work. So, Korean Air has released a passenger information video with a bit of a twist. In a bid to convince passengers to fly again, the airline has employed everyone's favourite childhood toy to deliver the message. In the video, a team of minifigures workers can be seen sanitising the aircraft, which is a 777. As they go about their chores, they can be seen removing seat covers and spraying disinfectant solutions prior to departure. Most interestingly, the airline uses little Lego bricks to simulate how the HEPA filters remove the germs and viruses from the cabin air. It says that the Boeing 777 has 8 of the filters and even shows a little Lego worker removing and replacing the unit to keep the air safe and clean. Korean Air followed its first video with a sequel explaining procedures and safety measures at the airport. While sequels are usually poor cousins to the original film, we have to say this one is pretty good. It's not the first time Lego bricks have had a cameo in an airline film. Last year, Turkish Airlines worked with the stars of the Lego movie to drive home its safety message in a hilarious new video. In a recent survey undertaken by Inmarsat Aviation, South Koreans were shown to be more cautious than any other nation when it comes to resuming flying. The passenger confidence tracker found that 35% of respondents would not take a flight until COVID-19 disappears, a significantly higher number than any of the other 12 countries included in the research. South Koreans are also worried about how virus transmission is on the plane, and 54% said that they worry about catching the virus at the airport or on the plane, which is preventing them from travelling right now. A figure only overshadowed by their fears of catching COVID abroad. So what do we think, guys? Obviously, I love Lego. I'm sure we've all played with Lego at some point in our time. Nev, Lego man?
Yes, very much so, except when you stand on it inadvertently. As we all know, that is the most painful thing. In fact, even worse than childbirth, I would say. I must say.
Wow, okay.
I was literally going to say exactly that. Any parent probably used to love Legos until they had children, and now everybody hates Legos because of the middle of the night.
That's true. There's a sort of fascinating little graph here, actually, which might be worth just sort of trying to sort of thumb our way through. So sort of South Korea is sort of second one on the right, essentially, at the top there. Second one from the right, sorry. Second one in, as it were. It's sort of interesting, really. Sort of, when would you be confident to take your next flight? I mean, I don't know. Perhaps we're the wrong audience to be asking this question to, though, because essentially, the very fact that we're doing this is because we are keen in aviation and all that kind of thing. And I dare say all of us literally can't wait to get on our next flight to sort of do, to get going and stuff. I'm just trying to look at some of these stats here. So 22%. I'm just looking at the various numbers here. So 22% in the UK is saying within a year. But again, that not until COVID-19 disappears is quite low here, actually, in the UK at only 7%. And you compare that obviously to why the video exists, like with South Korea, with a whopping 35% of people saying, like, we're not going to do this until it's all over. But I'll make sure there's a link to the story that's got this this graph on, because it does make genuinely quite interesting reading, and we're sort of more keen to get in the air than I sort of kind of expected, really. I'm just trying to see who's second. Is it Singapore? I think, yeah. It's just Singapore and Finland are sort of at 14%, which is the nearest one to South Korea for wanting the COVID-19, happy to fly once COVID-19 has disappeared. So, there's I don't know. I don't know. I guess I sort of expected some of the some of the sort of I don't know. I don't really know where I was going with that, to be honest with you. But Hungary also is at 14%.
I was expecting Australia to be in the kind of never, because Australia, if you've ever watched those programs on TV on Quest or whatever it is, where the Australians don't let anything or anyone in the country,
No.
You know what I mean? I forget what the TV program's called now, but you've probably seen it on the TV channels. Nothing to declare. Thank you, John. Nothing to declare. Yeah, they just seem to always. No one can ever get in the country. It's COVID or not, you're not coming in. Captain Cruz in the chat room. Does it say how many total respondents? I don't actually think it did it?
Yeah.
Very good point, actually. Yeah.
The answer is we don't know. I don't think it's certainly not on that graph. No. Okay, all right. Producer
John's going to find out.
Yeah, John's going to look into that for us now. Okay.
So, Matt, the next story you've got then is it's actually good news for Boeing because, Ryanair are doing something exciting.
Right, okay, yes. I don't know if exciting is the correct word, but anyway, the headline on this story is Ryanair buys 75 Boeing MAX jets in largest order since the aircraft's grounding. So Ryanair on Thursday ordered 75 Boeing 737 MAX jets with a list price of $9 billion, throwing a commercial lifeline to the embattled US plane maker after regulators lifted a 20-month safety ban. The order from the Irish Airline, Europe's biggest low-cost carrier and one of Boeing's most important customers, is the largest for the jet since 2018, before two fatal crashes led to a 20-month global flight ban. It's certainly the deal of the new century, Ryanair Group Chief Executive Michael O'Leary told Reuters later on. This is a great aircraft. We're proud to buy them, we're proud to fly them, and our passengers are going to enjoy flying on these aircraft. The MAX has a list price of $125 million. Ryanair did not disclose the price it will pay, but deals typically include discounts in excess of 50% of list prices. Ryanair was expected to win an even bigger discount of well over 2/3 in return for a headline-grabbing relaunch of the MAX that helps fill gaps left by cancellations, sources said. Part of the discount was compensation for the 18-month delay with the first delivery of the MAX, O'Leary said. Asked during the signing ceremony about the price concessions, Boeing offered, O'Leary joked, not enough. I'm sorry to say it is a very modest discount. Ryanair also already has 135 of the 197-seat MAX 200 on order and experts and expects to receive its first jet early next year and the final one by the end of 2024. Ryanair also hopes to agree to another large order of the 737 MAX order over the next 18 months and expects to be flying the 230-seat MAX 10 by 2025, O'Leary told Reuters. So Ryanair has a record of striking deals to lock in low costs when its bargaining power is highest, most famously by placing an order for 100 new 737s in the wake of the September 11, 2001 attacks, a deal about which Michael O'Leary famously said, "I wouldn't even tell my priest what discount I got off Boeing." Ever the charmer, Mr. O'Leary, isn't he there? I mean, I don't know. What are we thinking? Do we think he's... I personally feel that he's not telling the truth there. I think he probably got an absolutely stonking deal.
I think Richard Adams nails it.
Yeah,
Richard Adams in the chat room says that he reckons that Boeing are doing a buy one, get one free.
Right, okay. I mean, I don't think they'll quite be going to those kind of levels, but yeah, we'll have to see. What was that? Sorry, Stephen Ivy saying in the chat room, Carlos?
Stephen Ivy says that he reckons they paid $1 each for them.
Right, okay. Oh, good. Lovely. So it seems,
well, at the end of the
like
day, it's a business, right? Like, you know, hey, if he's in that position, and it speaks. Ryanair, make fun of them or not, is one of the largest and most established 737 operators in the world. So if they have confidence in the MAX, go for it. And hey, if they can get a great deal on them, that's the industry.
Perhaps, Matt, with every MAX, they got a substantial meal.
Oh, well, they got a cheese and ham panini, like with every... Yeah, absolutely.
It has to be a substantial meal.
Right, true. Okay. I mean, well, all right, a packet of crisps and a panini then. Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So the... Okay, yeah. Sorry, I've got a little bit of a glitch here in the studio.
Yeah, John says, John, our producer, says these are just options they're exercising with other deals that they've got on the table. So,
oh, cool. Right. Okay.
Yeah. Nev, moving on to you for the next story. This is excellent, blinking excellent news.
I am delighted with this news. It's on simpleflying.com, and it says that British Airways saves its last two Boeing 747 retrojets. BA has confirmed that the last of the three retrojets Boeing 747 aircraft will be saved from the scrap heap, including one aircraft in the airline's current Chatham Dockyard livery. A total of 4 Queen of the Skies have been saved from being torn apart. BA saddened many aviation fans earlier this year when it announced that it was ending Boeing 747 operations after half a century. However, British Airways is not alone in its actions. Airlines such as Qantas and KLM have also retired the type ahead of its time, and today Lufthansa is one of the leading 747 operators with its fleet of Dash 8 aircraft. Well, BA confirmed that its BOAC retrojet would be saved from being scrapped. The aircraft will find a new home in one of the business parks in the Vale of Glamorgan, and its new home in Wales. The aircraft will continue to be cared for by aviation enthusiasts. Golf Bravo Yankee Golf Charlie, the aircraft that wears the BOAC livery, was the first aircraft to get the British Airways retrojet treatment. Indeed, the airline's first 747s were delivered in the livery 50 years ago, albeit with a smaller hump. With Negus going to Kemble and BOAC going to the Vale of Glamorgan, that leaves the Landor livery. Well, the Landor is currently in Cardiff with BOAC. However, the aircraft Golf Bravo November Lima Yankee will soon fly to Dunsfold in England. Dunsfold will now house 3 former British Airways Boeing 747s. The airport already had one of its BA Boeing 747-200s used as a set in music videos and Bond films. However, it received its second aircraft earlier this year, which was a 747-400 in the Chatham Dockyard paint scheme. Well, isn't that brilliant? That is very good news. I thought it was all going to go terribly wrong for them, but good that they've saved the retro ones. Very pleased to hear that.
You in the same agreement with me, I think, Nev. You're a Landor fan.
Oh, definitely, yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. That was
Yeah.
by far my favourite one.
Yeah, definitely.
It epitomises well the airline delivery. Actually, I really enjoy it. Really nice.
Yeah, yeah. I'm glad. Yeah, we're going to take a trip to Dunsfold now, then, Nev.
Yes, we will, and of course that's where all the Top Gear stuff.
Oh.
Still filmed there now. It used to be filmed there. The original series certainly were. So yes, just not far from Guildford in Surrey, southwest London. So yeah, that'd be good, wouldn't it?
Lane Street in the chat room says, guess the insurance claim on the one that burned is paying off.
Oh yes, that slight fire they had the other day in Spain, wasn't it? That's right.
Oh, was that in Spain? Oh, I
Yeah.
thought that was here in the UK.
No, it was being
Spain, yeah.
stored down there for the time being. But yes, some business went on there, and well, hopefully they've got it fixed by now.
I was going to say, actually, before we move on, Armando, what was your favourite livery out of those retro liveries that BA used?
You know what? I remember seeing, and I had this BOAC model when I was a kid, and to me that just always struck. I know it wasn't the fanciest of all of them, but I just love, and I thought British Airways was just always the epitome of class in all their liveries. So it looked way better than some of the ones we had here in the States. I liked all of them. I guess that's my non-committal answer.
Well, I mean, you're certainly...
But I'm an airplane nerd, so what are you going to do?
Yeah. You may, as I say, you may have won favour with Nev also. Perhaps there is hope for this embargo to be lifted.
Yeah, when you guys were reading the story last week about the crockery sets, and we had a nice spirited discussion in the car about how we should spend our money, because I was all about buying all of these British Airways blankets and crockery sets, and I would love to have a full set of that in my kitchen, but I don't think she agreed.
Right. Okay. I mean, it sounds very similar to a conversation, no doubt you and Gemma would have had, Carlos, if you wanted to do something similar.
The way you do it, Armando, is you buy the stuff, you get it delivered, you put it in place, and then you wait.
Yeah, the difference is between you and me, Carlos, is I'm trying to buy plates and you're trying to buy an entire airplane door.
I mean,
okay.
It's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. I've always
well, okay. Yes, it's
Richard Adams mentions in the chat room, he says, make sure we get to see the ones at Dunsfold flying before it closes to be built on. Well, I hope they don't build on that. Well,
yeah, absolutely. We'll have to see.
Dunsfold flying before it closes. Before it closes.
Perhaps we should do that, yeah.
Right.
So,
okay.
Armando, we'll stay with you, Armando. Let's go on to the next story. And as you've actually got 2 dogs yourself, so this works well for you.
I do. Out of all the aviation podcasts, I don't know, as a combined community, how many stories we've done about emotional support animals. But finally, from NBC News, this story is from NBC News. This was covered all over the news this week. The era of emotional support pigs and peacocks on airplanes is about to end after the Transportation Department ruled on Wednesday that dogs are the only animals defined as service animals. That regulation tightens the reins after a year-long battle between airlines and passengers who have requested permission to carry a menagerie of animals on board in the name of emotional support. According to the Transportation Department, the service animal is defined as a dog that is individually trained to do work or perform tasks for the person of benefit, or for the benefit of a person with a disability. They go on to say that the department received more than 15,000 comments on the notice of proposed rulemaking. Nobody ever comments on those things. It's usually like 5 people that comment on any proposed rules. The final rule announced today addresses concerns raised by individuals with disabilities, airlines, flight attendants, airports, other aviation transportation stakeholders, other members of the public regarding such service animals on aircraft. The emotional support animals are no longer considered service animals, but the ruling still requires airlines to allow dogs that are psychiatric service animals. Kind of goes on. We've talked about so many different animals. There's peacocks, pigs, turkeys, snakes, I think there was a llama at some point.
There's a picture of an aardvark on the
Ferrets,
on screen right now. I mean, it's just like emotional support monkey.
Was I seeing things on there earlier, Matt? Did you put a picture up of a woman holding a kangaroo?
I did. Yes. No, you aren't tripping. Penguins here, which is nice, I think. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of a penguin. Don't get me wrong. Yes, right. I assume this is a joke picture. Is it? Is this one that?
No, it's
a
real.
picture of an elephant that they're trying to squeeze into the. Well, I want to say the hold, but no. There we go. Wow. Okay. Yes. You are completely right, Carlos. There was a. I'm just trying to find it now. Where are we?
Kangaroo. I mean, peacock's pretty bizarre, but who the hell has a support kangaroo?
And I must say, that picture is not a picture of a happy kangaroo, judging by those eyes.
It does look rather annoying.
Yeah, absolutely, and they're not exactly the most unaggressive creatures in the world, are they?
So if when I fly on holiday next, then and
right.
I want to take. So I want to take you with me, Matt, and I want you to get on for free. Can I say that you're my emotional support, Matt?
Right. Okay. What doormat? Maybe I don't.
Well,
know.
no. Then they have to let you on. They have to let you on.
Right. Well, no, not now, because that's the whole point of the story. Is because they have changed the rules, haven't they? So they've obviously got wise to that. The filthy animals.
I think back in 2018, I thought it was funny that American Airlines put out an animals that they banned and included amphibians, ferrets, goats, hedgehogs, spiders, sugar gliders, which I had to Google, waterfowl, and specifically animals with tusks, horns, or hooves. Although, as Micah mentioned in the chat room, miniature horses were still allowed as properly trained service animals.
Right. Okay. Yes. I mean, yeah.
Stephen Ivy makes a good point in the chat room. Kangaroos are apparently a good dinner.
Right. Okay. Yes. I mean, it's kangaroo is apparently a delicacy. Certainly. Hello. What's amusing you now?
Richard Adams says, as long as you wear a collar and a lead, Matt.
Oh, I say. I mean, that.
Family show, Matt.
Yeah,
Family show.
I don't really have a lot I could say to that. I don't know what to. Do you know what? We'll pretend that didn't happen. Shall we move?
Anyway,
apparently it tastes like chicken. They say that about everything, don't they? They say like if you eat alligator, it tastes like chicken.
I've run out of sherry now. This is not good.
Dan Brennan is saying kangaroo burgers yum, which is probably quite true. I have had kangaroo because we can have it here in a local restaurant, can't we?
Yes, we can,
Carlos.
Kangaroo. Yeah, we can.
Over at the Black Swan, can't we?
Yeah.
In fact, I've never done it. Perhaps we should do when all this nonsense is over. We should go and give it a go. We'll go and try kangaroo. The Holmesville Black Swan has got.
Welcome to Dan Brennan. Hello to you, Dan.
Yeah.
He's just said kangaroo burgers are yummy.
Yes, exactly. That's what I say. We'll have to go and give it a try.
We'll give it a try.
Yeah.
Captain Cruz says, with some passengers, you could understand pilots soon need emotional support animals.
Right, yes, I see what he did there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Again,
very
he's
true.
probably right. Absolutely. Would you be allowed as an emotional support animal in the cockpit, though?
Yeah, that's the first officer.
Oh, I see. Right. Okay. Does he have to wear a collar and a lead as well, or is that just? Have I once again slipped into the world of fantasy?
Any pilots who have any issues with the show, send your comments to. I feel rather annoyed and upset at planetalkinguk.com/John.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah, any complaints, we always say send them to complaints at airlinepilot.
That's correct. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. That's much more like it. Yeah, no, I like the sound of that. Anyway, next.
Moving on to the next one. Yes, exactly. Moving from animals to bags. So for all of our listeners who fly with Easyjet, which is quite a number of us here in Europe, Easyjet, this one comes from itv.com, and Easyjet are going to be making significant changes to their cabin baggage allowances from next year, so beware. The new rules, which will come into effect on the 10th of February, will just in time for Valentine's Day.
Lovely.
Will see passengers charged if their bags do not fit under the seat in front of them. The seat a passenger has booked will also determine what bags they can take on board. Those with an up front or extra legroom seat can take an additional large cabin bag on board. The new cabin bag size can be a maximum of 45 by 36 by 20 centimetres, including any handles or wheels, and smaller than the controversial Flybe measurements, which saw a backlash from passengers. There is no weight limit, however, passengers are expected to be able to lift their bag themselves into the overhead lockers. The airline says the changes are to improve boarding and punctuality. EasyJet says...
I'm sorry?
Sorry, I had a cough then.
Families
EasyJet
go.
says if a passenger's cabin bag exceeds the maximum size, or if someone brings a large cabin bag to the gate prior to departure without the correct seat selection, it will not be allowed to go in the cabin and will be checked into the aircraft hold for a charge, which will probably be astronomical. For those travelling on EasyJet before the 10th of February, the existing bag policy will apply. Passengers who booked before the changes were announced have been informed they can drop their larger cabin bags off at the EasyJet Plus bag drop for free when they arrive at the airport and collect it from the baggage carousel after the flight. Cabin baggage fees and charges can also be found online on the EasyJet website. And actually, there's a few little stats and figures on here that says hold luggage up to 15 kilos. But anyway, anything from 20 up to 23 kilos, I should say. Hold luggage up to 23 kilos. Maximum or minimum maximum charges. So the minimum charge will be £9.49. Or this is checking in online, these fees, and the maximum charge is a quite hefty, and you can probably buy a suitcase for this, £42.49 if you pay for these online. And if you do these at the airport, so if you get to the airport and want to check these in, you're then going to pay between 45 for the bag drop at the desk and £48 at the boarding gate. So it pays to do things online before you leave. Now, obviously, Nev, you never ever and haven't flown EasyJet, I don't think, before, have you, Nev? So
I have once.
Well, you have
actually,
once.
Yes. Yeah. Glasgow to Belfast, I think it was. Yes. I think it was
Did you get
25 minute
there?
flight.
John is saying, yeah. Well, I used to fly EasyJet quite a lot back in the days when because
We could fly?
there is that. But there was a time when they first stopped doing the Derry flights from Stansted. Because that was the nearest airport to where I was going, so to where my auntie lives. So quite often when we would go to visit, we would have to actually go into Derry was the plan. But of course, when they closed that route, we were then having to use. So we ended up going into Belfast, and of course that was EasyJet. And I know when we went for, I can't remember what the event was that we went there for, but at the time, EasyJet were one of the few people who were still allowing you at the time to travel, because it was within the UK essentially, because you didn't require your passport, and EasyJet were one of the few that allowed, as long as you had photo ID, i.e. a driving licence, you could still fly to Belfast. So
Micah in the chat room says, "What if if EasyJet passenger service or if you have a dog, a service dog, that's where your service dog goes under the seat in front of you. So if you have a service dog, following on from the last story,
right,
Immense difficulty with this new ruling. I just don't see it being workable at all. There's already difficulty with people arguing the so-and-so with how, the size of their bag when you get on the aircraft in the first place, whether you have to put your bag in a measuring thing. I don't see how this is going to speed things up at all. I just think it will lead to more arguments and actually more aggro for the poor cabin crew as well. We'll have to see, won't we? Whether it's the check-in staff that have to deal with it or the cabin crew. But
you'll always get that one person, Nev, who'll slip through the net with a bag that's the size of a 747. And tries,
Yeah, ain't that the truth? Ain't that the truth? And that was the thing that used to really annoy me, is because you quite often get the person who was in front of you would have the most monstrous bag, and you'd literally look at it and think, there's no way that should be in the overhead locker. Do you know what I mean? It's like it won't even fit, and you're thinking, so how did that even get through? Get through into the aircraft, let alone being tried to put in your overhead thing? Because the trouble is then there suddenly isn't room for everyone else's stuff when this happens as well. But it's just out of interest, Nev, what is the baggage policy for BA?
Terribly generous, and usually at the discretion of the crew as well. Very often, you have to have certain types of card. As well.
I see. Gold one by any chance?
Be up there, Yeah. But actually, even on the lower grade cards, they're pretty generous, and they will say though that when the flight is particularly full, they will offer to check in things for free for you if they feel that they can't put everything in. But but still, some of the stuff that I see people bringing on to BA flights. Very large suitcases. It should not have got past the gate. I just don't know how people think they can get away with that. But and then, of course, they can't lift it because it's too heavy to put up in the overhead locker anyway. So
indeed.
So sticking with you, Nev, this is good news for you, Nev. Being a business traveller.
I'm ticking 4 out of 5 of these boxes very easily. Well, let's have a listen and a look. So it's on the sky.com, the news section of the website. And this came in late last night, actually, which was really interesting. It says new business traveller exemption from quarantine announced. So no countries have been added or removed from the UK list of travel corridors, but a new business traveller exemption from quarantine has been announced. So from 4 a.m. on Saturday, people in a number of categories will no longer have to self-isolate upon returning to England, even if they're travelling from a country not on the travel corridor list. So this is the list. So there's 5 categories here, and I tick almost all of these boxes. High-value business travellers.
Tick.
Certain performing arts professionals.
Well, I mean, tick, obviously.
TV production staff.
100% tick.
Journalists.
Well, we'll put a dash next to that one, shall we?
Then it one's a bit dodgy. Is recently signed elite sports people.
Well, do you know, when I saw that sentence, the first thing that came into my mind was you, Nev. I'll be honest.
Yes.
Yeah.
How very nice of you. Well, Transport Secretary Grant Shapps said the move will allow more travel to support the economy and jobs, and full guidance will be issued soon. I wish the government wouldn't do this, coming out with a bit of a tease without the full story. Either announce the whole thing or don't do it. But I think this sort of partial announcement is not helpful at all. But it does say that the exemptions will be subject to specific criteria being met, including trips that create or preserve at least 50 UK jobs. So who's going to be the arbiter there then exactly? People will only be exempt when carrying out specific business activity and will only be allowed to meet with others as required by that. The Department for Transport said. The department said more information will be released once the new rules have come into effect, or if they've worked it out. That's the real story there, I think. At the moment, nearly all people arriving back into the UK from destinations not thought to be at low risk of COVID-19 have to self-isolate for 14 days. From the 15th of December, travellers arriving in England will be able to end their quarantine period after 5 days if they test negative for the virus. Passengers will have to pay for the tests themselves and will need to book with one of the private providers on the government's list, and they will cost between £65 and £120.
See, now I'm going to perhaps be slightly controversial here, so I apologise if I cause offence by saying this, but I mean, a large part of me is very excited, like, yes, this is great. There's, because people, as you've said several times, isn't it, Nev? People still need to travel in order to do business. And the restrictions that have been in place have been less than helpful, shall we say, in regards to especially what you do for a living. Now, the bit that's worrying me here is this sentence here that says passengers will have to pay for the tests themselves and will need to book in with one of the private providers on the government list. And the reason why that sits with me really uncomfortably is I'm very nervous that this whole thing is being used as a way of making money for someone.
Yeah, I mean, it's not just the business side of things,
Yeah.
but I think the problem is, as I say, is these sort of partial announcements and teasers about what might be coming. But I think try not to be too political here. I'll try my best not to be, but the Prime Minister has talked about levelling up the country, which I completely agree with. I get all of that, but here it just flies in the face of all of it because of I was joking obviously about my categories, but seriously, it does not really level up anything at all, and why should journos and TV production staff be ahead of everybody else? I don't understand that at all. So we'll have to see. But I think this is going to be, I don't know, a bit of a short-lived thing, perhaps, because I think trying to make up these rules in advance of anything without the full story, I just think is a really difficult piece of legislation. But we'll have to see what the Schatzmeister comes up with.
Well, and of course, I mean, obviously, exciting news that was released this week, certainly here in the UK. If you haven't heard it already, obviously the Pfizer vaccine has been released as has been deemed safe for use, and they're sort of the program is in place as we speak, isn't it? Where hopefully vaccinations could start as early as next week, which is great. So I mean, obviously that's going to be potentially a huge game changer. I mean, perhaps we won't need these rules that long, I guess, if we could try and maybe feel a little bit more excited about the future.
I will just add that if anybody's ever seen Nev go from the private security screening to the BA lounge, like that level of speed and skill, I would challenge anyone that says he's not an elite sports person.
Yeah,
so he checks.
This was before the lockdown lard, as I call it, the 14 pounds increase in weight since about March, which I think other people have suffered from as well.
Yes, me included. To be fair, yeah, me included.
Anyway, moving swiftly on kebabs. I mean,
I beg you, bless you. Yeah.
Sorry, Armando, you've got a very interesting story next, haven't you?
Well, it's a great segue to the most ideal airline in the world. This is a global airline that has no passengers, no cargo, and only flies one way. So this team at Jet Test and Transport runs a global airline. All the airplanes are one-way trips with no passengers or cargo. They are experts in ferry flights, moving empty aircraft around the world. So in this age of COVID-19, and arguably even before and after, with airlines parking and shedding jets, co-founder Steve Giordano and his pilot partners are some of the busiest guys in the sky. About half of the world's fleet of more than 20,000 commercial aircraft are leased to airlines. At the end of a multi-year lease, the airline may decide to re-up or return the airplane to the leaser, and that's where Jet Test and Transport comes in. Jet Test began operations in 2006. They began ferrying airplanes a couple of years before that. But following the procedures of an airline, Jet Test is regulated under a Bermudan Air Operator Certificate and is structured the same way as a larger air carrier, even has its own identifier call sign for its flights, which are JTN. This operation functions just like a small airline, but with one big difference in that it doesn't actually own or have any aircraft. It's literally just point A to point B flying for them. And as the name suggests, Giordano and his team perform test flights on airplanes returning to service after maintenance or modification, including planes that started life as passenger jets and were converted to haul cargo, fight fires, or oil spills, anything like that. Basically, these airplanes and these pilots some of them have up to 10 type ratings, 10, 11 type ratings. Most of the full-time, contract, and part-time pilots have at least 5. They stay qualified across the board on everything, explains the owner, Giordano. He says he flies a lot and plans can change minute by minute. He told CNN Travel that over the 6 days in November, he planned to cover more than 31,000 air miles with about half the distance as a passenger on positioning flights. There you go. So the reason I chose the story for this week was that is a whole part of aviation that we never talk about, is ferrying aircraft, moving aircraft around. There is a whole group of professional contract pilots that are that have type ratings in different aircraft. And for example, my company flies a Jetstream 41. Well, there's not that many pilots left with a type rating, especially that are current, in a Jetstream 41. So there's this whole other part of aviation that we've never talked about on this show, which is that contract pilot life. It is certainly a way to get into aviation and not do the cargo operations or the airline thing. Yeah, really, really interesting.
Actually, with you all flying at EDO, Armando, obviously you can fly a varied amount of different aircraft. Is this a sort of job that you'd kind of be interested in, if you...
I would, especially because it's a contract, and some of the contracts can be quite lucrative. My brother we have Steve and Ivy on the show. My brother had a couple thousand hours, probably 9,000 hours on the Bombardier, the regional jet, the CRJ. And he ended up getting a contract to bring 5 airplanes from Venezuela that were at the end of a lease back to the United States. And I mean, he must have made $15,000-$20,000 a trip on that. So, I mean, for an airplane that costs millions of dollars, paying a crew of 2 or maybe 3 people, a couple $10,000 is nothing to them to get the airplane safely back to the original location or where it's supposed to be. So, yeah, I would totally do it. If I could make 20 grand a month and work 3 days, I'm on board.
I think I'm going to reach out to the jet test people. I think I'm going to see if I can get them to come on the show.
Well, you should show them a picture of the flight simulator setup you have, and they may say, well, this guy's qualified to fly anything.
Actually, if one of you could do me a quick favour, guys, actually, in the chat room there, you mentioned Stephen Ivey, and he was talking about some of the aircraft he was seeing at a particular airport, which escapes me. So if you could just look at that for me in the chat room very quickly. But he's just sent us to the WhatsApp number, which is +44 757 2249 166. That's +44 757 2249 166. He has very kindly sent us a couple of photos. So what is the airport that we're talking about here?
So Stephen driven past the Mojave Airport,
there we go,
where there are some Qantas 747s there and a couple of Virgin 747s as well. Obviously, the Qantas ones being there has upset our listener Evan's shoe quite a bit.
Right. Okay. Oh dear. It's there's a it's sort of, I don't know, I suppose we should.
I want to go there.
Yeah,
so jealous.
Yeah, we should be used to seeing aircraft lying around at the moment, I guess, but that's not going to happen. Also, in other news, Jonathan Warner, who is preparing himself for what he describes as his favourite part of the show. Good news, everyone! He's been allowed the TV this evening, so there we are. We are live on his big television in his lounge right now. There you go.
Oh, lovely!
All part.
Well
of
done.
Fun. Yeah.
Actually, Armando, when I come over and see you in the US, can we go to one of the boneyards, please?
I think the US is a little bit bigger than you think, but sure. I mean, we could go
spoil it.
Yeah, you can take an 11-hour drive. I'm sure that'll be fine.
Well, if you had come here in the middle of like the peak of COVID back in April, we could have gone to any major airport and seen 130 airplanes sitting.
Good
on the
point.
ramp.
Yeah, massive boneyard essentially.
Yeah, I want to go and like poke and prod aircraft.
Right. Yeah, okay. I used to fly regularly into Roswell Airport in New Mexico, and that's kind of an old boneyard, call it. And there were some really, really cool airplanes from the 60s and the 70s. Elvis. You guys know Elvis, right?
Heard of him? Yeah, certainly.
His original, I think it was a Sabre liner, was sitting there on the ramp in Roswell, New Mexico, and it's still sitting there. The outside looked terrible, but apparently the inside, from the guys that maintained it, was still in its original maroon velour, whatever he was. Maybe a Jetstar. Captain Cruz in the chat room says a Jetstar. I think he might be right. It was. Right, I remember it was a quirky looking airplane.
Good, lovely. Okay. Although I think a conversation for later on, Carlos, is your desire to go and poke and prod aircraft. I think that needs some kind of analysis. But anyway, on to the final story in commercial.
Yeah, we're going to load up a special stinger to play out after this next story. This one comes to us from
mental note. Next week, get the tumbleweed ready.
In this. Buzz off, Matt. So this next story is on the english.jagran.com. Oh, bless him. This is all about bees attacking an aircraft. And this is great. This has got some awesome pictures. So in a bizarre incident, 2 Vistara flights were delayed by an hour each after a swarm of honeybees clamped themselves to the exterior of the aircraft parked in the same bay at the Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose International Airport in Kolkata. So the flights were delayed an hour, as it says on here, and the incident occurred on Sunday when one of the Vistara airliners were ready for takeoff to Delhi from Kolkata Airport. Prior to the initiation of the boarding process, the airport staff saw the bees had settled themselves on the exterior of the airplane. The airport fire crews were then reportedly seen spraying water jets to dislodge the bees, according to a report by the Dainik Jagran. The moment was widely shared on Twitter. Matt's playing the video there, which you can see on the screen. The second Vistara flight, parked in the same bay, was then hijacked by bees again the following day and faced an hour's delay before being cleared in a similar fashion. In a similar incident last year, an Air India flight was delayed by 2.5 hours after a swarm of bees settled at the exterior of the aircraft in the same airport. The bees have been cleared by spraying water jets onto the aircraft. And I have to say, after seeing this video, and I'm a big lover of bees and honeybees, I'm one not to swat them or kill them if I see them in the garden or in the house. I let them out nicely. I just think it's a bit harsh, spraying them with water off the side of the aircraft. I mean, I would have thought it would have been a lot easier just to taxi the aircraft onto the runway. And I'm pretty sure once the aircraft had reached, 150, 140 knots, the bees would have probably decided it was not a great idea to stay on there and
gone
float
down
away.
the starboard engine. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. What could possibly go wrong there? Yeah.
That could be a whole new film. Yeah, like a Sully film.
Right.
Instead of birds, it's bees. Swarm of bees. But
Family show.
Family
Right.
show.
Yes.
But honestly, the pictures look amazing. The video is really good, but the pictures, there is a lot of bees on that aircraft.
How did they get there just in one night? That's crazy. And what is it about that spot on the airplane? I wish we had an Airbus.
Well, I seem to remember because we were talking about this in our planning meeting, and I seem to recall because we had Nick on the call for a little while last night, and I seem to recall he was saying basically that all it requires is if the hive are looking for a new home, essentially, and the queen bees, literally the queens, decide that that's where they're going to be, they will magically appear, and the workers will start building the nest. So for whatever reason, Queen Bee decided that the side of that aircraft was going to be their new home, and the rest, as they say, followed.
Crazy.
Yeah.
Lane Street, as always, an absolute legend in the chat room.
Oh no.
Says that
I'm nervous.
Must be near to the loo vent.
Okay.
No. Okay. Jonathan Warner.
Deathly silence. I don't know what to do with that information.
Jonathan Warner says bees on a plane, starring
Well,
Samuel L.
different to
Jackson.
snakes, I suppose. Which would you prefer, snakes or bees?
Someone called Neville Bounds.
Never heard of
He
him.
says perhaps Buzz Aldrin was on that flight.
Right. Okay. Yes. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It is amazing, honestly. Mother Nature is amazing. But anyway, that is where we're going to buzzingly bring the commercial.
That
news
wasn't even a
segment to
pun.
close.
What are you
I know.
doing?
Oh dear.
Oh no.
We're going to have to take this whole
Look,
section out
Matt,
and post.
Matt,
Yeah. I
Matt,
think so.
Matt.
Some complicated editing is
Matt, come on.
required. Yes.
be
hello.
nice. Be nice.
Look,
or you can just forget the editing, Matt, and just add a laugh track.
Yeah, listen. Yeah. We're not. We're not. You know, that breaks the rules, though. If we put something, you know, if we claim something's funny when it's not.
Oh no! Hold on. Hold the phone. Stephen H in the chat room.
Right.
Maybe with that airline, you earn nectar points.
Okay, let's end it there.
Okay, moving on. That is where we're going to move. That is where we're going to move bring the commercial segment to a close, and we are going to move on to the next segment. Where this week we're going to play our latest Plain Truth with Captain Al and Matt. And this week, for anyone who's interested in this kind of thing, which is a bit scary, this week it's all about cabin decompression.
Hello and welcome to another Plain Truths, and this week we're going to be talking about cabin pressurisation. Joining me, as always, is the legend that is Captain Al. Hi, Captain Al.
Hello, Matt. How are you doing?
Yes, I'm good, thank you. Yes, I'm very well. Okay, I'm very familiar with the phrase cabin pressurisation and also sudden depressurisation. And I suppose my first question really is, why is the cabin pressurised in the first place? A lot of like the GA planes and stuff that we fly around here, for example, you just open a door and it's all fine. So what's the main purpose behind pressurisation?
The main purpose behind pressurisation is that if we didn't have it, we would die.
Oh, I mean, well, okay, fair enough.
So without being quite so flippant, if I was to teleport you to the top of Everest, which is what, about 18,000 feet or something like that?
Yeah.
How do you think your breathing would be affected?
Well, I know certainly at high altitudes and stuff, the air is much thinner up there, therefore it's much more difficult for you to breathe.
Okay, so the air is a lot thinner the higher we go. So this is very, very simple. So if there are any, doctors, please don't write in. I don't want to go into great detail about this, but those little molecules of oxygen are much more spread out. So when we take a breath in, we're not getting the same amount of oxygen volume. Yeah. It's not that there is less oxygen at altitude. There is the same proportion of oxygen in the air as there is at sea level.
Right.
But it's a lot more spread out.
Right.
So it's the same air. It's just that it's a lot less dense. Okay. That's at 18,000 feet. If we were to put ourselves at 35,000 feet and try to breathe, we will become unconscious within about 3 or 4 seconds. So we need some way of making it possible to survive at the altitudes that the aeroplane is going to operate in. So we need to pump air into that cabin at a greater volume than it can escape so that we can condense the air, if you like, make it dense so that we can breathe. So that's pressurization. We pump a load of air into the cabin and slowly let it out to regulate what the cabin altitude would be. So it would be very nice if we could keep the aircraft at sea level all the way up to 35,000 feet. But we also need the aeroplane to be light enough to fly. And we can't pressurize something that's thin aluminium to that sort of level, because obviously to pump that amount of air in, we need the fuselage to be strong, and the amount of pressure that we would have to apply pumping it in would just burst the aircraft. So we can't do that.
Right.
So most airliners pressurize the aircraft at altitude, and it varies a bit. Some of the modern ones are a little bit lower, but between 6,000 and 8,000 feet. So when you're sat at 35,000 feet, that's the altitude that the aeroplane's at. But within the cabin, because we're pumping in loads of air, it's at 8,000 feet. So basically, we pump loads of air into the cabin, and that exerts a pressure of about 8 pounds per square inch trying to get out. So that is why when you see people trying to open doors on aeroplanes in flight, it simply won't work, because the doors all open inwards. That's a design feature. So the doors are effectively being pushed by the air pressure outwards, and because the door frame is smaller than the door, they're not going to go out. So there's no way anybody could open it in. Now, 8 pounds per square inch doesn't sound a lot, but it is quite a significant amount. There's no way you could open a door.
Right.
So that's pressurization. We need it to sustain our life at that sort of altitude.
Okay.
One of the benefits of pressurization is that we're pumping this air in. We can control the temperature of it. So we can therefore condition the air so we can have it at a nice, comfortable temperature, because at 35,000 feet, typically the outside air temperature is around about minus 56.
Right. Oh,
which
that's
is a
quite.
bit
No, that's quite chilly. Yeah, that's frostbite territory right there. I think. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think the coldest I've ever been outside anywhere was in Canada, and I think that was something like minus 32 or something like that. So it's still a good deal warmer than minus 56, minus 57.
So that's obviously the pressurisation of the aircraft. So the function of that, if you like, is to make it presumably much easier for us to breathe.
Well, if we didn't have it, as we climbed up, as we go through about 10,000 feet, most people will start to become a bit sort of lightheaded.
Yeah.
Start to get things like cyanosis, which is, it's basically a lack of oxygen in the blood. So your extremities will start to turn blue, your lips will go blue, your fingers will go blue. This is the onset of hypoxia, incidentally. As we continue to climb, depending on how used to altitude you are, so people who, say, live in the Himalayas, they will last a bit longer. As we sort of progress up around about 14,000 feet, it's starting to become quite serious. Incidentally, hypoxia is a strange beast. One of the symptoms of hypoxia is euphoria, so you feel really good, so you don't actually feel unwell.
Right.
That's a bit of reverse programming there. So typically people who are hypoxic don't realise it, and then eventually you just become unconscious. And if you continue to climb, you will eventually die because there isn't enough oxygen saturation to sustain life. So as jet aircraft, well, actually, when we had turboprops, they started to climb higher and higher because, as we've mentioned several times on previous episodes, aircraft, the higher they go, the less fuel they burn, therefore greater distance, etc., etc. So that became more so with jet aircraft. So, yeah, it became a necessity. It's not a luxury, it's a necessity.
And now, presumably, rapid depressurisation is presumably where something like the systems involved in pressurising the cabin have gone wrong or failed for whatever reason.
Yeah, so if we talk about pressurisation failures, we'll split that up into two.
Okay.
So there's a slow depressurisation and a rapid depressurisation. So let's have a look at the slow case first. So a couple of things. We control the rate of climb within the cabin because obviously the aeroplane might be climbing at 5,000 feet per minute. We don't want to subject you to that because your ears cannot handle that amount of pressure change.
Right.
That's why you have popping ears and all the rest of it. So we will typically climb the cabin at a much lower rate, so maybe 500 feet per minute, which we can deal with. So how do we do that? Well, what we do is we still pump the same amount of air in, but we let some of it out.
Right, okay.
And we control it. So if you ever have a look at the rear section of a passenger airliner, you'll see a flap, and when it's on the ground, it's open. It's the outflow valve, and it allows air to flow out of the pressurized section of the aircraft. So when it's open, any air that we push in effectively comes straight out. If we were in flight and we were to close the outflow valve, which it tends to be more or less closed, are we in a sealed container? No, because we've got windows, doors, and much as we try to, we can't create a perfect seal.
Yeah,
when the aeroplane's
almost,
yeah. Well, not quite a vacuum, but just, at the end of the day, anything that's got openings in it has the tendency to leak. It leaks less when it's new. And if you've ever had a 35-year-old car, the door seals aren't quite as good, or the window seals not quite as good, and that's the same on an aeroplane. So there is a natural amount of leakage. It tends to be less on a new aeroplane than an old aeroplane, and all within acceptable limits. So the aeroplane does leak, a bit like a boat. Cruise ships, they're always pumping bits of water out.
Yeah,
it's not
absolutely. Perfectly normal. Yeah.
So if for any reason we have a failure of one of the pressurization computers, whatever, the aeroplane will just slowly depressurize. And when I say slowly, maybe over a period of 5 minutes or so, depending on how leaky it is. So this isn't a critical event. Now, talked about computers, just very briefly on the aeroplane I know, the modern Airbuses have two pressurization computers. So if one becomes faulty, the other one automatically takes over. And then there's a backup. So the backup is just using electric motors to control that outflow valve. So it's the manual backup. So you still have control of the pressurization. It's just operated by the pilot rather than a computer.
Right.
So there's the primary, the backup, and, if you like, the manual mode. So there's 3 ways of controlling the pressurization on the aeroplane. So the only real way that you could have some sort of issue is if the actuators for the outflow valve were physically jammed, so it doesn't matter which of the 3 systems you use to try to move that, it's stuck. Okay?
Yeah.
Just a slow depressurization is not a big deal. You just make a normal descent, and you could get down to levels where you'd be able to either regain control of the pressurization or just fly at a lower level that would allow you to operate the aircraft, not necessarily to destination, but maybe to make a precautionary diversion. So that's not a big deal, if you like. Now, the kind of fast depressurization, often called an explosive decompression, is a bit more of an event. If we can take ourselves away from Hollywood, where, someone fires a gun and,
Right.
The next thing, there's massive chaos within the cabin and people are being sucked out.
Yeah.
As I've already said to you, the aeroplane naturally leaks a bit. So if someone fires a pistol and it happens to penetrate the skin of the aeroplane and leave, a small hole, a bullet hole, that's not going to be any great deal, because we can push more air into the cabin than that hole is going to let out. Now, bit dramatic, but if someone, explodes a bomb on the aeroplane, that's going to leave a bigger hole. Okay? That's going to be like the size of a door, and that's going to be a bit of an issue now because we've got a fairly large opening.
Physically pump that much air in, essentially.
Now, as I said, we're pumping air in, so we're putting pressure on. So exactly like when a tire or a balloon pops, when the pressure exceeds the ability to contain it, it does tend to go bang, if you like, because that pressure has to equalize. So there will be a fair amount of commotion in the cabin because now you've got a pressure differential. So things that aren't secure within the cabin are going to want to go out through that hole.
Yeah.
And there was a case a few years ago where a terrorist did let a bomb off. He was sat at the window. The bomb was successfully detonated and a sort of like door-sized hole was created next to him, and out he went. But he was the only one. So everyone else had their seatbelts on. So yes, there was a big hole, and they were able to move people away from the hole, and he was the only fatality in that.
Right.
So yes, there have been occasions where large sections of aeroplane have come off in flight. There was an Aloha Airline 747 where a large part of the roof came off. Quite clearly, you're not going to be able to pressurize the aeroplane when something the size of a small family car has come off the aeroplane. But these are very few and far between events, these explosive depressurizations. Passenger doors on airplanes are bigger than the hole that they fit into, so they don't naturally come out.
No.
Windows, they don't tend to fall out on a regular basis. I can only think of 2 in the last 40 years, so I don't know how many million flights you'd have to take before that,
A very low percentage, certainly,
Yeah. So explosive decompressions are very rare. Where we've talked about failures of the pressurization system, if you had, lost control of the pressurization system, say the outflow valve was forced fully open or whatever, and you can't pressurize it, the aeroplane's going to depressurize fairly quickly. So you would initiate then an emergency descent. So the first thing that would happen is the 2 pilots would go on to oxygen, because without us, no one else is really in a good position. So we'd go on to oxygen, and then we would descend the aeroplane as quickly as we possibly can. And the idea being is that on most aircraft, the passenger oxygen masks will deploy around about 14,000 feet in the cabin, okay?
Right.
So what we're trying to do is we're trying to get the aeroplane down below 14,000 feet so that we don't have the mast deploy. It's not a cost thing, but we know that when the masts drop out of the ceiling, people will panic.
Panic, yeah, absolutely.
And the panic will cause more injuries than
the actual
anything else.
Right,
yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So we're trying to get the aeroplane down below 14,000 feet. If we can do that, the aeroplane is now unpressurized, but passengers are sat down, so they're not undertaking huge physical activity, so they're going to be okay. They're not going to suffer too much. And then it depends on how high the ground is around you. If you can, you continue to just descend down and decide what you're going to do. But the key thing is that significant depressurization events are not common. And if you do find yourself in one where the masks come down, please do what it tells you to do in the safety information film or demonstration. Put your own on first before helping others, because if you're faffing around trying to put someone else's on, you become unconscious, you're no use to them. So if you're a parent, put yours on first. If little Bobby collapses, it's only lack of oxygen, you can put yours on, then put his on, and he'll be back with you super fast.
In seconds, yeah.
Yeah, so put yours on. It needs to go over your mouth and nose. Just like masks that we have to wear these days.
Oh, don't open that can of worms. Oh, no.
It is no use to you over just your mouth.
No, indeed.
Please pull down sharply.
So
you don't have to rip the thing out of the socket, but it's the pulling down of the mask that activates the oxygen generator. If you do not pull down sharply on it, you will have a plastic mask and a bit of tube, but nothing is coming out of it. The little bag that is attached will not fill up. It is not a balloon. It is just there to regulate. If you can breathe, everything is fine. Do not worry about the little bag.
So, I mean, we've touched sort of briefly on the mask there. I mean, are there other scenarios in which the mask would be deployed?
They're tucked up in above your head, and those little doors that open are just held by magnetic latches. So when the cabin altitude reaches 14,000 feet, those latches are just released. So gravity then causes the mask to come down.
To fall down, okay.
Hence why occasionally a mask will just drop down in isolation, because just the magnetic latches
it's just as
come undone.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. And obviously cabin depressurisation, is that the only scenario in which the mask can be deployed, or can they be used in other scenarios like, say, fire or anything like that?
Okay, so bad idea to plunge a load of oxygen into a cabin that has a fire.
As I started to say that, I thought, oh, I'm going to get picked up for that, aren't I? Yes, good point. Yeah, high levels of oxygen and a fire, perhaps not the healthiest of mixes.
Yeah, probably akin to using petrol to put out a fire.
Okay, lesson learned.
It's a perfectly reasonable question, and no, we do have the ability to deploy them manually, primarily because if we have reached a cabin altitude of 14,000 feet or greater, part of our checklist is to make sure that the masks are deployed. So in other words, it's a human backup system to make sure that the masks go out. Yeah. Generally, we wouldn't deploy the masks in the cabin for other scenarios, because once you pull down on the mask, it's a chemical generator that produces oxygen, and there's no way of turning it off.
Right.
So it's not like an on-demand system.
Okay.
It just pumps oxygen out. So not ideal to suddenly have a sudden increase in oxygen in the cabin unless you know why you're doing that.
Okay. Captain Al, as always, it's a real pleasure. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Oh, there we go. Another cracking segment there, as always, from Al. It's such good fun. Such good fun. Enjoy recording those.
Hey, Matt, I will say, I'll add on to this, that the rapid decompressions, for me, I had in my 21 years in the Air Force, I had a few classes or courses that stood out. And one of the things that I've used most as a professional pilot was that altitude chamber. Right. So in that altitude chamber, they talk about rapid decompressions, they talk about slow decompressions, and most importantly, your individual signs of hypoxia, because everyone has just little different indicators. For me particularly, it was tingly fingers, and then a feeling of like you're getting hot, type thing. And it was one of these things where I was actually able to recognize those hypoxic symptoms when I was flying out west in the Rockies in a unpressurized Cessna. And it was just one of those classes that I took so much away from that in my future, post-military career, where now, unfortunately, it is not mandatory for pilots to go through an altitude chamber. But I wish everybody could. But it was a good topic.
I mean, what does that bring to the party then? As far is it just a way of you learning what it does to your body essentially, or is it just a way of learning to cope with it so that you've experienced, so you know what to expect, or?
Exactly. So there, in the chat room, we were talking about some high visibility incidents of rapid decompressions where parts of airplanes came apart, or the top of the Aloha Airlines 737, or uncontained engine failures like Southwest 1390, 1380. And while those do happen, most common is actually a barely detectable slow decompression, where some airplanes have automated systems that will tell you that, some don't. And it is important to be able to recognize, hey, something's just not right in my body, to at least make you look over at the pressurization gauge.
I see. Right. Yeah.
And
Because
Brian's
it's
saying as well that with those slower depressurizations, hypoxia can give you a feeling of euphoria, actually.
Yeah.
So actually, you're feeling pretty good about yourself, but in fact, your brain
The end is nigh, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
absolutely.
it.
Yeah, interesting. Well, as I say, again, as always, a really interesting topic. Yes, thanks for the feedback there. Actually, Armando, I'm surprised it isn't something that even the commercial guys have to do as well, as you say, because it would, if nothing else, would help you recognise the signs.
Yeah, altitude chambers are expensive. It's a big old machine. It's a hyperbaric chamber type thing, and there with technology now we have reduced oxygen breathing devices. So you've maybe seen some professional athletes put on a device while they're running or something like that, reduces their oxygen intake. That has come into portions of aviation where they can train hypoxic symptoms, and they'll have you read a checklist or fly a simulator with an ROBD. But it's just not widespread in the aviation community. It really should be.
Okay, well, it's time to move on to what many are classing as the highlight of the show, and for that, we hand it over to Armando. So take it away.
Yeah, Matt, I've sent out the push notifications per PTUK Gray, so if you're ready,
Yes.
Our fans are here. Let's hit the button. All right, we're going to jump right into this one. And a couple weeks ago, we were talking about this AN 124 that had an uncontained engine failure and slid off the runway. So if Matt, you'll play that video. This really interesting, and you got to love Russian ingenuity. They found a couple of tank movers. These two military vehicles are designed to pull tanks out of ravines or broken down tanks or damaged tanks. They hooked two of them up together, somehow linked it to the airplane, and they are pulling it back onto the airfield. So I don't actually know. I'm sure our chat room can answer it, and you can get on the search engine real quick. I don't know how much an AN 124 weighs, but this one was pretty well stuck in the northern mud of Siberia or something like that, and they were able to pull it out with just these two little tank movers. So I'm sure they'll tow it to somewhere on the airfield. I believe the latest update says that it was pretty much a write-off. So wherever it is, it'll either become a museum piece or just get part of that.
Landing gear looks still intact, doesn't it, for the most part?
Yeah, it seems to be rolling pretty good.
Yeah, wow.
405,000 kilograms, Armando.
Yeah, what is that in feet or in Fahrenheit?
Now you're asking.
It's a bunch.
Yeah, it's a big number. That's all we need to know. It's a very big number.
It is a big number. But hey, good job to them. You got to love, sometimes when you don't have paperwork to stand in your way, you're able to accomplish some amazing.
Here we go. In US tons, 446.
Yeah, no big deal.
Yeah.
No big deal.
Easy. A great video, though.
So,
great video.
Yeah. So anyways, we'll move on to this first story. This comes to us from the Aviationist, and the U.S. Air Force just recently published an initial findings of the F-16 crash that happened at Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina. The tail number was 940043. It was assigned to the 77th Fighter Squadron, 20th Fighter Wing. Crashed on June 30th, 2020. We did cover it on the show when it did happen. But unfortunately, First Lieutenant David Schmitz, 32 years old, from Santa Barbara, California, lost his life. And they've just recently revealed their investigation. So to actually quote the report, it says, during the final phase of landing on runway 22 right, the mishap aircraft struck the localizer antenna array short of the runway threshold, severely damaging the left main landing gear. After briefly touching down in the underrun, the mishap pilot executed a go-around and alerted the air traffic control personnel of the situation. Following more than 20 minutes of discussion between the supervisor of flying, the control tower, the mishap pilot, it was decided to attempt an approach and cable arrestment on runway 4 left. During the maneuver, the mishap aircraft's tailhook did not catch the cable, and the left wing fell to the runway, dragging the aircraft to the left of the runway. The mishap pilot ejected from the aircraft, but the ejection seat malfunctioned, and the parachute did not deploy. So this mishap pilot was fatally injured, and the mishap aircraft was destroyed. So that's a quote from the report. According to the formal accident report, Major General Randall Efferson, who was the president of the Accident Investigation Board, he wrote that he finds by a preponderance of evidence that the cause of the mishap was the mishap pilot's failure to correctly interpret the automated landing system and identify the runway threshold during his first landing attempt, which resulted in the severely damaged landing gear. Evidence also indicates that the mishap pilot was not fully engaged on the challenges of flying a night instrument approach due to his unsuccessful attempt to conduct his first ever air-to-air refueling at night, which is not allowed by Air Force regulations. Two factors substantially contributed to the mishap. The supervisor of flying chose not to consult the aircraft manufacturer, which resulted in a decision to attempt a cable arrestment in lieu of a controlled ejection. And second, a series of ejection seat malfunctions occurred, which resulted in the mishap pilot impacting the ground while still strapped to the ejection seat. Obviously, the report on this is much longer, but some key points to pull out of this. We'll kind of work backwards. At the end of the day, the cause of this pilot's death was the ejection seat malfunction. These ejection seats are designed to deploy and work at zero airspeed on the ground, zero altitude. There was a series of malfunctions attributed to some of the parts that were supposed to be replaced in this ejection seat, those parts being deferred off another year for replacement. Unknown if that was the final cause, but it's just incredibly unfortunate, and I just can't comprehend what must have been going through his mind as he's strapped to the seat that is supposed to be working and saving his life. Kind of working backwards from there, something that I didn't know is that the supervisor of flying, which is kind of an on-duty officer, usually in the tower and the operations center, they have a hotline to the aircraft manufacturer. So in this case, the F-16 Lockheed Martin has a dedicated line that any base, any tower can call and consult them for technical matters, or in the case of an in-flight emergency like this. When Lockheed was consulted after this mishap, it was deemed that had they called the engineers at Lockheed, they would not have recommended a cable arrestment, and they would have recommended a controlled ejection. Now, would the ejection seat have malfunctioned in the air? That's an unknown, but at the end of the day, the manufacturer would have recommended something else. And then continuing to work backwards, there was a lot of things going wrong. We'll never know what was going on in his head, but there as a single seat fighter, going up and attempting a night air-to-air refueling by himself for the first time, and not being able to plug may have induced some stress in this pilot, leading to a bit of a judgment error chain, leading to these mishaps, and ultimately the approach was flown outside of its parameters, and the gear hit those antennas at the end of the runway, had the aircraft just flown and approached normally, none of this would have happened. Like the guys in the chat room are talking about, it's the Swiss cheese model. There is never a single cause to a mishap. It's always an error chain and things lining up that can be traced all the way back. There was additional, the report is very long, but there was additional considerations, of course, because of COVID and reduced flying hours, reduced training hours. So pilots weren't getting as much training and as much flight time. So it's just a very unfortunate incident. And to me, the most sort of heart-wrenching part is the way that the ejection seat malfunctioned, and it's just a terrible accident.
Very sad story indeed.
Yes, our thoughts go out to the family, obviously.
Yeah, and the family of the pilot, but as you guys know, military units are very, very close. So in addition to that, the unit, the 77th, as well as everybody at Shaw Air Force Base that had to respond to that mishap. But let's go on.
So moving on to the next story, and this one is on aviationtoday.com, and this is regarding some guys not too far from me and you, Matt, and who we see in the air frequently in our area here in Bungay, in Suffolk. This is British Army modernisers with first Apache AH-64E helicopter deliveries. So the British Army received its first two Boeing Apache AH-64E helicopters from the US government on November the 26th. The delivery is the result of a $2.3 billion deal that was first announced by the United Kingdom's Ministry of Defence in July 2016 and includes a total of 50 Apache attack helicopters, which will be replacing their Apache AH Mark I fleet retiring in 2024. The Apache attack helicopters were delivered to Wattisham Flying Station and will be maintained and serviced by the 7th Aviation Support Battalion, Royal Electrical and Mechanical Engineers, which is 7th Squad. Was that 7th?
Aviation Support Battalion.
Support Battalion, yeah. According to a press release published by the British Army. Brigadier Steve Hussey, head of Capability Air Manoeuvre, said in a press statement, while there is still some way to go before the Army's modernised attack helicopters capability reaches full operational status, the arrival of the first Apache E model to the UK is a major programme milestone that has been achieved despite the impact of COVID-19. The arrival of the Apache Model E attack helicopter to be delivered to the British Army over the next 2 years marks the beginning of a significant uplift in capability to enhance the Army's contribution across the spectrum of military operations, said Major General Jez Bennett, Director of Capability, said in a press statement. So he said supporting hostage rescue missions to countering an adversary's anti-access aerial denial platforms, the Apache E outstrips the outgoing Mark I aircraft by increased platform digitization, improved weapons and avionics, and the ability to use the latest and future technology to enable teaming with semi-autonomous systems such as UASs. Now, Wattisham, which is not too far from me, Matt, I didn't realise Wattisham, I don't know if you knew, Armando, but Wattisham is the biggest centralised operational Army airfield in the UK, which is home to the 3rd Regiment Army Air Corps and the 4th Regiment Army Air Corps. But those guys probably fly pretty much 5 to 6 days a week in our area here. And they actually use the airfield at Beccles or Ella, where you've been to.
Oh, yes,
Armando.
no, I've seen them. Yeah.
Yeah, they use that as part of their training ground, as well as the valley where me and Matt live in here.
I was actually doing a school run, believe it or not, where I came along the Ella Road going out towards Frossenden, which is one of the villages that are out there. So I come from the local high school, which was John Lehman. Moved on, and we got to, as I say, it literally popped up above the hedge line, and literally the kids on the coach behind me screamed because it did look like it was in full, because it literally popped up above the hedge line with all its like fake guns and everything all pointing at you, ready to sort of like, it was just like,
oh, they're not fake.
Oh, yeah.
They're not fake, no. No.
Well, we'll say they're fake for the purposes of the teenagers that were then literally screaming their heads off, and it was just the element of surprise, because it literally appeared from nowhere. It wasn't there, and then suddenly above this hedgerow, there it was, like literally aiming at us. It was quite the sight. I wish I had, because I've got dash cam now in the coach, and I wish I had it then, because it would have been the most, seriously, it would have been the coolest footage as it popped up above on the bend. I mean, it was just amazing.
Well, you know, that reaction that you had, or that they had, is exactly the reaction that we're hoping to elicit from the enemy when we pop up from a hedgerow in combat, and they go,
yeah.
I was going to say that chain gun that's on the nose of the Apache, I would not want to
be in firing line of that.
Absolutely, from that. But it's a great. Actually, just going to say, I've done quite a few cross country flights over Wattisham Air Base in a 150 on my own, and with Stuart as well. And I'll tell you what, those guys, considering you have to ask for permission, as Armando would know, have to ask permission to fly over their airspace at Wattisham. They're some of the nicest people to speak to on the radio.
Are they really?
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
That is nice.
Well, what a mean-looking helicopter that Apache is, huh? It's always just been such a crazy.
From mean-looking helicopters, we move on to what I can only describe as Micah's favourite aircraft in the whole wide world.
It is, isn't it? Yes, you're dead right there. Well, this is on the warbirdsnews.com website, and it's a unfortunate news story, but then it turns into a good news story. So we like those sorts of bits of journalism. Well, during an excursion back in October to Loch Ness in Scotland for filming work, the Catalina Society's PBY suffered technical issues whilst on the water, preventing its departure. You might have seen some picture of that on the television actually at the time. It was determined that the aircraft needs an engine change in this challenging location. So the Catalina Society sports the Canzo A Catalina Miss Pickup, which is Golf Papa Bravo Yankee Alpha, and is essentially her fan club. Well, in less than a month, the volunteers of the Catalina Society disassembled the compromised engine, shipped a new one to Urquhart Bay Quay, installed it, tested it, and flew her out of the lake. It's amazing what a dedicated group of volunteers can do. So on December the 1st, the aircraft went back onto the waters of Loch Ness early in the morning and successfully flew out to Inverness Airport, where she had been inspected. After being refueled, the PBI was flown south, initially with a night stop in the Midlands at the Catalina Society's base as the Catalina Society's base in Duxford was temporarily closed due to COVID-19 restrictions. But unfortunately, because Duxford was closed, they wouldn't be able to open specifically for Miss Pickup on the Wednesday. But if it had stayed in Inverness for the night, that would increase the risk of getting them stuck waiting for a weather window large enough to fly the near 500 miles back from Scotland to Cambridge. The decision was made to fly as far south as possible on Tuesday afternoon in order to minimise that weather risk. With limited daylight hours, a location in the Midlands was chosen, just 100 miles from the Imperial War Museum at Duxford. The flight south went perfectly, taking in the stunning views of the Scottish Highlands, Lake District and Peak District en route in the watery winter sunlight. Miss Pickup touched down some 2.5 hours after departing Inverness for her night stop just before sunset. Well, a tremendous effort by the crew and supporting organisations up at Loch Ness and Inverness. And of course, a huge contribution came from all those generous individuals who contributed to the GoFundMe appeal. The donations have been a tremendous help towards the huge cost of getting the Catalina airborne again. As this is being written, the update, the aircraft itself should either be in the air or have already landed at Duxford. I guess it's probably already there by now. The Catalina Society is the supporters club for the PBY Catalina. The mission is to keep this beautiful old bird flying boat airworthy for many years to come, and by forming the society they have brought together people who share this mission, and you can join the society and learn how to get involved by visiting the Catalina Society website. Just Google that and you can find it.
And that very aircraft, believe it or not, is something that we saw. Was it Farnborough? I think we saw it.
Yes, it was.
It was Farnborough. And here we go. This is the joys of this, the joys of being live and being sent into the +44 757 WhatsApp number. There we are. There's a picture of all of us that's just been sent in by Micah. You can see Micah, myself, Carlos, Captain Al, Pip, Brian Coleman, and the gentleman whose name escapes me, but was the guy who was in charge on the day, basically, in front of that very aircraft when we were there. See, this show's amazing sometimes, isn't it?
Amazing. And also, Armando, I mean, how about this? Trying to replace an engine in the middle of Loch Ness. I mean, well,
that's so clever, isn't it?
Taken a heck of a job to do that, mustn't it? And also to be sure that it could be tested properly in order to depart the aircraft.
That's it. And many of these people are volunteers too. This the Catalina Society and like so many of these warbirds and these antique aircraft are completely funded and maintained by benevolent organizations here, in the U.S., the Commemorative Air Force being the biggest one, the Collins Foundation. These are all volunteers. They're very experienced crew chiefs, but like you're saying, Nev, somebody had to go up to Loch Ness for a couple weeks and do an engine change or just very, very cool. And like the chat room is talking about, just incredibly heartwarming that the fans and the supporters were able to make that happen for such a beautiful airplane.
An incredible story, as you say, sort of starts tinged with sadness at the start because, it ended up being stranded there. But as you say, an amazing mission to get it back in the air. So well done. Right, we are rapidly running out of time, I'm afraid, boys and girls. So it is time to start wrapping up. But Carlos, you've got a couple of things you just want to run past a few people first.
Yeah, as we said at the beginning of the show, for those of you who may not or may have heard us in the past, we do a big spectacular Christmas show. And the show we do at Christmas time, which we put out on Christmas Day, is actually recorded live, but it doesn't go out live on a certain day, but it goes out pre-recorded on Christmas Day. But this year, for the first time ever, we are going to have a audience watching us
Zoom
record
audience, as is the rage all these days,
watching us record the Christmas show, because honestly, no one's ever seen us record the Christmas special before, but trust me, if you've ever been party to seeing us record the Christmas special, it is an experience.
And if nothing else, if you're easily offended, then don't apply. Is the short
But for this year, exactly, Ned.
Yeah.
But for this year, we're going to do something special, because for all our Patreon and PayPal donators to the show, you have all received, or should have received, if you check your inboxes or even your spam mail, it shouldn't be in there. We've emailed all our Patreon and PayPal donators, and new Patreon and PayPal donators as well, if you donate to the show, to join us for the recording of our Christmas show. We have got a huge amount of hosts joining us on the show from pretty much every major aviation podcast in the world. Plus, we've also got the return of one of our special guests from a while back, Ariel Tweeto from the Flying Wild Alaska series. She's going to be joining us on the Coast team as well on that recording. So that's going to be it's going to be an epic show, I think, guys.
Indeed,
this year,
absolutely,
definitely. We've got quizzes and all sorts of things planned.
Absolutely,
So
it's going to be a busy week.
And also, on the note of the Christmas show, if you're watching or listening to us now on the show, or listening to the audio show, and you want to send us a Christmas message, we would love to hear Christmas messages for the show. And if you want to send those in, you can actually send the audio to our WhatsApp number, or you can send the audio messages into our email address, podcast@planetalkinguk.com. And MP3s, send them from your phone, or if you record them on your PCs, laptops, tablets, or however you record.
Any format is accepted. Yeah.
Any format's fine, as long as it's not on paper, because we can't obviously play that.
Well, we could read it out, I suppose.
We could read it out.
Go old school.
But we would love to hear your Christmas message message to the show. So please do send that in.
Indeed. Okay, we're going to do a quick wrap up, boys and girls. What are we all up to this week? Carlos, what are you up to?
I'm off this week. I'm having a week off. I have a week off, and I will be mostly here all week.
What by your fireplace? Yeah.
By the fireplace. I shall be in here with my sim set up, flying around the world.
Okay,
yeah,
lovely.
That'll be my week.
Indeed.
And Matt, what are you doing this week?
Well, no, not a lot really. Not a lot really. Same sort of stuff. Actually, I just wanted to mention very quickly a great little. I'm going to try and pop it up on the screen. Actually, one of the people who I think he's still in the chat room, DJ Wilf. So it's DJ space WILLF. And he got a couple of videos there that he sent me, which are really worth a watch. Actually, so if you haven't done so already, search YouTube for DJ Wilf WILLF. And as I say, there's some great videos there. One of which he's done himself, like basically visiting airports of the Antonov Airlines AN124 coming in at Stansted, basically absolute beast. So a couple of lovely videos on there. So actually, I should probably sit down there. Look at that. Look at what a beast. What a beast that is. That aircraft still amazes me. It's a bit like is it the Dream Lifters or whatever it is that they call them? You know, these absolutely ridiculously massive aircraft. So yes, I should probably be taking a look at some of the videos he's got on there. Actually,
before we move on to the next host, Matt, Captain Cruise was asking how your birthday was.
Oh, it was very good, thank you. Yeah. So what did I do? Not really a lot because of lockdown, obviously. What did I do? Oh, myself, Nev, and my friend Owen, we watched the Grand Prix for a little while, didn't we? That was quite nice. On the Sunday, we enjoyed that. And then I had a very special birthday tea that was hand-delivered by Carlos and Gemma from my favourite restaurant, which obviously is Three Cooks here in town. And I haven't had one of those since lockdown, you know, like the first one. So that was a real super special treat. So it's a very simple birthday.
How are the prawn crackers, Matt?
The prawn crackers were exemplary, as always. Anyway, enough about that.
Nev, what vineyards are you visiting this week?
Oh.
Well, I don't think I'm doing any of that, but the banana has been fixed. So
winning!
Hey! I've got nowhere to go, which is a bit unfortunate, so never mind. But yes, super job from the body shop there. Very nice.
Yeah.
I've got my new passport this week.
Oh.
A nice British one, which
Nice
only took
blue
a
one.
week to come from start to finish, which was great. Again, I've got nowhere to go.
No.
But no, a little bit of customer visiting next week, hopefully socially distanced, of course.
And then, of course, the next person that we ask, you know, so we have our very mundane, usual sort of, you know, what we've been up to this week type stuff. And then we say, Armando, what are you doing this week? And we all sigh with depression and sadness as his amazing life fires into life, as always. So what are you up to this week then, Armando?
Well, this week is a pretty cool week. Matt, I sent
Of course
you
it
some
is.
pictures
Every
there.
week in the world of Armando is a cool week.
Yeah, last week was skydiving with Steph. So this week, my company has received a bit of a loaner airplane. We've got a loaner DC-3 that we're.
Oh, is that the pictures that you sent me here?
I did, yeah, and so that's the airplane that we're going to be flying this week, and I'll get a. Well, it's a bit like feeding carp at the zoo, so all the pilots are clamoring to take a number, and we have about a week of flying that airplane either here or down in Florida, something like that. But yeah, you know, today I took Maddie, my daughter, out to the airport, and she got to run around, got to sit up in the cockpit, and yeah, from that picture you'll see that the DC-3, while it's a great big airplane, is not very big up front.
No. It's quite cozy. I mean, you'd struggle to socially distance in that cockpit, certainly.
Yeah. So that's in store for the week, is just trying to put some hours on that airplane. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, you see, do you see why I said that now, gentlemen? You know, it's just like, you know, we have Carlos, I did a bit of driving this week. Oh, Matt, I did a bit of driving this too. Nev, yes, I went down another motorway in my banana, yes. And what did Armando do? He got in a very cool aircraft with his gorgeous daughter and just had fun, basically. Your job is so cool, mate. So cool.
Yeah, at least I get to have a beard.
That's true. That is true. On the positive note, right? I think that's everything. Think all in order, Carlos.
Social media links, the social media links to do.
Armando. I apologise in advance, ladies and gentlemen, as I switched to Carlos's camera. He's found the Zoom buttons as well. I'll tell you what, I'm going to take it off you, and I'm going to do the show. So its website is www.planetalk. I'm ignoring you all. www.planetalkinguk.com. The WhatsApp number +44 757 2249166. That's +44 757 2249166. Podcast at planetalkinguk.com is the email address. That's podcast at planetalkinguk.com. We would love to receive any Christmas messages that we can include in our upcoming Christmas show. And if you'd like to follow us on social media, where you can find out all things to do with YouTube and to do with our photos and what we're all getting up to, search social media for Plane Talking UK, all as one word.
So that is where we're going to bring episode 347 to a close. Thanks.
Can I make a recommendation, ladies and gentlemen? Don't watch the video version of this show this week. Just stick with the audio. Just stick with the audio. It'll be fine.
Lane says he wants to see my goatee beard, so perhaps you could, do the honours for him.
So that is where we bring episode 347 to a close. Thanks to everyone in the chat room. As always, you have been absolutely legendary today. And also a big thanks to all our audio listeners of the show as well. Thanks for downloading the show from all the various platforms. And if you do get a spare minute in your day, we would love a review on iTunes or wherever you download the show each week from. So from me, Carlos, here in my home studio, from Matt in the PTUK Master Suite studio, from Nev in the Nev Tech studios, and from Armando in his glorious studios over in the Americas. Take care, everyone. Have a great weekend, and see you next Friday.
Cheers. Bye.
Good night, everybody.